You thought you were close, you thought things were great, and then one day your child just up and vanished from your life and you never saw it coming. If your child has cut ties and you can't figure out why, what I'm talking about today might be part of the missing piece of the puzzle. That same closeness that you cherished might have actually been the thing that pushed your child away. Today I'm going to be unpacking the hidden family patterns of enmeshment and codependency that can make what we think is love actually feel like control, and why those things are often at the heart of estranged relationships, even if we didn't know it was happening. I've lived this stuff. It feels kind of like a bucking bronco ride, and I know how bonkers it can be. I also didn't realize how long I'd been riding the ride and holding on for dear life until I couldn't do it anymore and I finally had to let go. But once I did, and once I started seeking real answers, much to my surprise, I ended up down a rabbit hole of dysfunctional family dynamics, generational trauma healing, and the hidden reasons behind broken family bonds. What I discovered completely changed how I saw myself, the world around me, my family, my relationships, and also how to get to real peace. Let's start by talking about enmeshment. This happens when boundaries between family members blur to the point that individuality gets lost. And instead of you and me, it feels like a we or an us, or it's nothing. One example of what this might look like is a parent who feels rejected when their child makes independent choices. This is especially true when an adult child moves forward and makes independent choices for their own life without involvement or consultation from their parents. This can be even more problematic if the parent doesn't like those choices and they make it known that they don't like those choices. And instead of being met with, yay, you're growing up and learning new things, they're met with lectures or emotional distance or even punishment. Another example of enmeshment might be a child who feels guilty for having needs that are different from their other family members. They're often afraid to express those things because of how they think their parent will react, or they may even be afraid to come and help the parent because they're afraid of not being able to get back out. Now let's talk about codependency. This is about you and your own perceptions of your worth and your identity. It happens when your sense of worth depends on being needed or rescuing other people. Instead of being able to stand on your own, you tie your identity to somebody else's struggles, their moods, or their approval. So while enmeshment is about blurry boundaries, codependency is actually about a misplaced identity. Though they're not exactly the same thing, they can overlap, and more importantly, they can have the same negative impact on a relationship, especially between estranged parents and adult children, but it can happen in any kind of relationship as well. Now let's talk about the difference between actual healthy closeness and enmeshment or codependency. Healthy closeness means that there are two strong, independent, separate people who are choosing to come together and enjoy a mutually beneficial relationship. They're not threatened by independence, and the connection is authentic and it's beneficial and enjoyable for everyone. Enmeshment and codependency, on the other hand, create connections that come at the cost of individuality. When this shows up in a parent-child relationship, that child often feels suffocated or responsible for maintaining your emotional state, both of which are very uncomfortable, and their natural response is going to be to pull away in order to create space and freedom for themselves. That's also one of the biggest reasons that estrangement situations happen. How do we know these things are at play? Well, they show up looking like things like the old saying, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Or in other words, something that's good for one person should be good for everyone, even if it's not. It could also be that when one person succeeds, we all take the credit because it makes us all look good. It might also be feeling overly responsible for another person's choices, their emotional state, their behavior, their actions, or how their life turns out. Finally, it could also be a deeply rooted fear of being alone, which makes distance from someone feel terrifying. The thing I really want you to know is no matter how this shows up, this stuff matters. I often hear estranged parents tell me, but I was there for them. I did everything for them. They had everything they wanted, and the thanks I got was they left me in the dust and disappeared from my life. Well, here's the truth about that. If being there for them meant not respecting their independence or honoring their no or leaning on them for your own support and emotional stability, then what felt like love to you may have felt like control and dominance or neediness to them. And that distance they created was about getting themselves out from underneath it. I know that's hard to hear, but recognizing this stuff is the first step to healing it. So what can you do to start untangling this stuff? Well, if some of it sounds familiar and you want to start changing the tide, there's a few simple things you can do right away. Number one is notice your language patterns. Instead of, I need you to do whatever, try an approach that says, I feel, and explain your emotions and what you might need. The second thing you can do is check your motives. Before you jump in and do anything or say anything, ask yourself, am I doing this because it's right? Or is it because I need to be right? Or because I need them to need me? If it's anything other than this is the right thing to do, then don't do it. The third thing you can do is create space for people to be themselves. This one might take a little bit of practice, but that's okay. It's a great time to start. The best way to get started with that is to practice letting the people you love make decisions for themselves. And then don't let those decisions dominate your relationship. Even if you don't like them, even if you don't agree with them, even if you can see the train wreck coming. And this is true even if their choices take them further away from you emotionally, physically, mentally, or in any other kind of way. It's a great time to practice resisting that urge to jump in and critique them or to offer your 2 cents, especially if they haven't asked for your input. Making small shifts like this can help you begin breaking down those family patterns and can help you reclaim your own sense of self. If you want to dive deeper or learn more about some of these things, check out the resources that I have linked below in the description. There's some great stuff down there. What I really want you to hear, though, is that enmeshment and codependency aren't about being a bad mom or a bad person or somehow defunct. Honestly, they were probably survival skills that you picked up somewhere in your own life, maybe from your own childhood or from an old relationship, and they're what you used to get through those things. But survival skills are not healing skills. And the way forward isn't to fight harder for closeness or to fight harder to get them back. It's also not to have the same level of involvement in an adult child's life that you had when they were children. If you want true healing to happen, it's time to build healthier boundaries that are based on respect and to heal yourself. That's the real path to peace. Whether or not your kids get on board or not, whether or not they recognize it, or whether or not reconciliation ever even happens. If any of this hit home, you might be wondering what other hidden dynamics are at play. I'll be addressing that in several more of my upcoming videos, so be sure you stick around for those. And I also talked about several of them in my last video too. Click right up here if you want to learn more about unspoken family rules, emotional roadblocks, and expectations. Those things can be silent relationship and family killers as well. Check them out. I'll meet you over there.